Imagine walking through a world where every door opens, but none lead anywhere. Where every smile is meant for you, but no one dares to meet your eyes. This is the invisible reality many attractive women inhabit, a labyrinth made of admiration, desire, and endless validation. From the outside, it looks like a palace. Inside, it's a gilded cage. Kierkegaard once said, "The greatest despair is the despair one does not know they feel." And this is where the prison begins. The more desired she becomes, the more filtered the truth that reaches her. Not because anyone is actively trying to deceive, but because the social structure itself creates a currency where honesty is scarce and strategic communication is gold. Here's the cruel detail. Lies don't arrive as poison. They arrive as care, as attention, as validation. A man says, "You're right," not because she is, but because it keeps the door open. Another says, "You deserve better," not to challenge her, but to increase his chance of being chosen. And slowly, unconsciously, a psychological pattern forms. Truth brings discomfort, lies bring reward. The invisible prison teaches its own lessons. She learns to value approval over reality, to trust charm over substance, to seek admiration over insight. Questions about motives, consequences, and cause and effect in relationships become muted. Every interaction shapes a distorted map of the world, a map where the signals of truth are drowned by applause. Kierkegaard called this comfortable despair. You believe you are free, when in reality, you are performing on a stage designed for your audience, every line crafted to please, not to reveal. And the tragedy is that this filter doesn't spare intelligence, career, or ambition. Attractive women excel academically, professionally, socially. But in the arena of relationships, the subtle terrain of human honesty, the feedback is compromised, leaving understanding incomplete. The more the world admires her, the less she learns about the mechanics of desire, deception, and attachment. Each compliment reinforces illusions, each reward hides a gap between perception and reality. She becomes fluent in a language no one else speaks, a language where validation is a reality and honesty is optional. She is powerful, yet unarmed, beautiful, yet blind to forces shaping her choices. Desire surrounds her, but truth escapes her. And yet, she is not at fault. This is not her failure. It is the structure itself, the world's design of social incentives, of attention markets, of emotional economics. The prison is silent, but it is real. Every well-intentioned interaction is subtly guided by self-interest. Every compliment is double-edged. Every reward teaches the wrong lesson. And here lies the quiet cruelty. The more she seeks truth, the more the system resists it. Feedback is requested, then punished. Authenticity is praised, then ignored. Genuine insight is invited, but rejected. She desires truth, but truth is rare. She craves guidance, but guidance is inconvenient. By the time she reaches adulthood, patterns are ingrained. Choices in love, in trust, in intimacy are colored by absence, by omission, by invisible manipulation. The cage is invisible because it is made of subtle social forces, not bars, and yet it shapes her just as surely. And here, the bridge begins to Jung, because when the truth is filtered, the parts of ourselves that cannot survive the performance, the fears, the insecurities, the contradictions, are exiled. They do not disappear, they grow, they wait, and soon they will demand to be seen. The invisible prison sets the stage. But what happens when the shadow she cannot see begins to speak?
The prison is invisible, but its effects are not. What is filtered, rewarded, and hidden forms a quiet chaos, one that grows inside her even as the world applauds. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny, disown, or fail to recognize. The shadow is not evil. It is not a flaw. It is simply the unconscious residue of all that we have suppressed in order to survive, to perform, to be admired. For women surrounded by constant admiration, the shadow finds fertile ground. Every smile, every compliment, every affirmation reinforces the persona, the mask we present to the world. Jung defined the persona as that which in reality one is not, but which oneself and others think one is. It is a necessary adaptation, a social survival tool. Imagine a woman admired for her appearance. She learns early approval comes easiest when she smiles, when she pleases, when she avoids conflict. She adapts. She performs. She smiles again. But the parts of herself that do not fit the script, insecurities, desires, boundaries, fears, cannot be expressed. They are exiled to the shadow. And the more visible she becomes, the more invisible her shadow becomes, until it becomes a silent force shaping her life from behind the mask. The danger is subtle. It does not strike with thunder or alarm. It whispers. A choice in love feels inexplicably wrong. A relationship collapses without obvious cause. A decision once thought wise turns catastrophic. The shadow is patient. It is unseen, but it is felt. And because the shadow is unconscious, it manipulates without warning, pushing her toward patterns she cannot explain. Jung also spoke of projection, the act of seeing in others what we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. And here the interplay is extraordinary. Men, women, society, they respond not to the full self, but to the persona. What is projected onto her is rarely truth. It is desire, expectation, and fear. She becomes a mirror, reflecting not herself, but the needs, fantasies, and insecurities of everyone around her. And the shadow watches, unacknowledged, silently observing the distortions and accumulating power. This is why beauty can be such a trap. It creates a distorted economy of attention. Validation floods the persona. The shadow is ignored. And yet the shadow is not an enemy. Jung insisted confrontation with the shadow is essential for wholeness. To deny it is to live partially, to perform endlessly, to exist in the silent cage of the persona. To confront it is terrifying. It is uncomfortable. It challenges the flattering narrative she has grown to trust. But it is also liberating. Only by seeing the shadow can she understand the true mechanics of her relationships, her desires, and her decisions. Only by accepting it can she reclaim what has been unconsciously lost, the self behind the mask. Here the connection to the invisible prison becomes clear. The filtered feedback of the world amplifies the shadow's power. Every lie told to protect her ego, every truth withheld to gain access, every compliment reinforcing the mask, these all feed the hidden self that grows in silence. It is a paradox. The same admiration that grants influence and power also deepens disconnection from reality. The more she shines, the more she is trained to ignore what is truly hers, her unfiltered perception, her instincts, her internal compass. And so she navigates life like a skilled performer. In love, she reads cues that may not exist. In friendship, she trusts what is convenient, not real. In every interaction, she negotiates between the persona the world loves and the shadow the world refuses to acknowledge. This is exhausting. It is lonely, and it is invisible, because the world celebrates the persona, not the struggle behind it. Yet Jung leaves a path forward. Awareness of the shadow is the first step. Honesty, even when punished, is a tool of liberation. Reflection, solitude, and curiosity about what lies beneath the mask allow the suppressed self to emerge. And paradoxically, the more she faces what has been hidden, the less power the invisible prison holds. The cage was never physical. It was the distortion of truth, the economy of desire, and the denial of self. When the shadow grows in silence, what happens when the world finally demands truth? When admiration no longer shields her from failure, rejection, or disappointment, what becomes of the persona she has relied on so heavily? And more importantly, what part of herself will she meet for the first time, finally forced into view?
For years, she has lived in a world designed to reward her appearance. Every compliment, every glance, every act of desire has reinforced the persona she wears like armor. It is beautiful, admired, untouchable. But beauty alone cannot sustain a life. It cannot guide decisions, it cannot teach discernment, and it cannot shield her from reality. And then life begins to demand truth. A relationship ends, a betrayal occurs, a failure cannot be disguised. The applause that once masked uncertainty is gone. Suddenly, the world she navigates through validation and desire no longer aligns with the reality she must face. The persona falters. The invisible prison begins to reveal its bars. Kierkegaard called this despair, the moment when one is confronted with the self they refuse to be. For attractive women, the experience is amplified. The persona has been meticulously reinforced by admiration, shielding the self from confrontation. The shadow, neglected for years, has grown strong, and now it asserts itself with relentless force. The collapse is not sudden. It is quiet at first, a subtle dissonance in decisions once effortless. A relationship feels hollow despite charm and attraction. A career opportunity shines, but satisfaction is absent. Validation no longer acts as a guide. Praise is no longer a shield. Influence no longer equals understanding. Jung's shadow is now unavoidable. Every suppressed insecurity, every fear, every unacknowledged flaw demands attention. The parts of herself she projected onto others, denied in herself and exiled from consciousness, are returned with intensity. Choices she thought were autonomous reveal themselves as reactions to the world's filtered reflection. And many collapse under the weight of what has been unseen for so long. The pain is amplified by society's silence. For women admired for beauty, few admit the consequences. Few acknowledge the subtle distortions that arise from living under constant observation and filtered feedback. The pressure to perform, to please, and to be admired has left her unarmed when the real world demands honesty. Every mistake feels catastrophic, not because it is inherently so, but because it exposes the fragile construct she has relied on for self-definition. Yet collapse is necessary. It is painful because it strips away illusions, but it is also the only path toward integration. Without it, the shadow continues to grow unchecked, shaping life unconsciously, sabotaging relationships, and deepening despair. To face the collapse is to face the self that has been hidden behind beauty and applause. To face it is to finally see reality, unfiltered, uncomfortable, and profound. She sees that the persona, no matter how admired, cannot replace self-knowledge. She understands that beauty alone is powerless without the capacity to confront truth, shadow, and the consequences of choice.
And here is the paradox. The collapse does not punish beauty. It punishes the neglect of self. It punishes reliance on admiration instead of awareness. It punishes the avoidance of truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable, inconvenient, or unwelcome. The persona may still charm, still attract, still be adored, but the inner compass falters and life's decisions reflect the gap between external perception and internal reality. The collapse is also deeply liberating. Though frightening, it presents the first opportunity for real self-awareness. The shadow, once unacknowledged, can now be integrated. Mistakes become lessons, failures become mirrors, pain becomes guidance, and for the first time she confronts life on her own terms, not the world's terms. Yet the process is slow. The persona, forged over years of validation, does not yield easily. Old habits, learned responses, and unconscious adaptations resist. The shadow, now powerful and vocal, challenges every assumption. Every relationship, every career decision, every personal desire is tested against this newly visible truth. The collapse marks a pivotal moment. The silent curse of beauty reveals itself. Not because beauty is dangerous, not because admiration is wrong, but because the system that rewards beauty often deprives women of unfiltered truth. It creates dependence on validation rather than awareness, performance rather than authenticity, charm rather than insight. And when reality arrives, the cost of neglecting the self becomes undeniable. As the collapse unfolds, new questions arise. How can she reclaim the self behind the mask? How can awareness, honesty, and courage counteract years of filtered admiration? And how can she navigate the world without the invisible prison shaping every choice? The collapse is painful, but inevitable. It is a reckoning. It is the moment where the shadow and the persona meet.
She stands before the mirror. Her reflection is perfect, flawless, admired. Yet it is not her. It is the persona, the mask, shaped by desire, attention, and filtered truth. The shadow stirs behind it, restless, insistent, waiting for recognition. This is the silent curse of beauty. The very thing the world envies shields her from herself. For years, she has been rewarded for what is visible, praised for what is performative, admired for what others want her to be. Every compliment, every gaze, every act of attention reinforced the persona. Every suppressed insecurity, every hidden fear, every denied truth was sent to the shadow. Carl Jung taught that the shadow grows when unacknowledged. It feeds on neglect, thrives on avoidance, and subtly shapes decisions in ways the conscious mind cannot perceive. For attractive women, the consequences are amplified. Every relationship, every choice, every desire is influenced not just by the persona, but by the hidden self lurking beneath the mask. The silent curse is not obvious. It does not announce itself with alarms or warnings. It whispers through decisions that feel inexplicably wrong, through patterns of relationships that repeat in pain, through choices that, despite outward success or admiration, leave emptiness inside. It is invisible to the world, yet profoundly felt by her. The persona remains admired, but admiration alone cannot provide guidance. The shadow, unacknowledged, is powerful, patient, and relentless. The world envies the life she appears to have: influence, attention, power. But no one sees the cost. No one hears the silence behind applause. No one acknowledges the subtle prison built from filtered feedback, strategic compliments, and the absence of truth. Beauty, in this sense, is a gift with a hidden toll. It grants attention, yet deprives understanding.
It creates influence, yet undermines autonomy. It is admired, yet isolating. And yet the curse is not permanent. Awareness can lift the veil, confronting the shadow, acknowledging what has been ignored, and seeking truth beyond admiration are the keys to liberation. It is terrifying because the persona will resist. It is exhausting because patterns of avoidance are ingrained. But it is necessary. Only by facing the silent curse can she reclaim herself. Only by stepping beyond the applause and the gaze can she navigate life with clarity. Only by integrating the shadow can beauty transform from a cage into a tool, a reflection not of who others want her to be, but of who she truly is. The paradox of her experience is profound. Her attractiveness brings admiration, opportunity, and influence. Yet the same forces that reward her exterior distort her interior. The silent curse is not in the beauty itself. It is in the system that surrounds it. Filtered attention, distorted feedback, the scarcity of honesty, and the exile of truth. The curse is silent because it masquerades as a blessing. It whispers that the world's approval is enough, but the self, unrecognized, quietly withers. And now, after collapse and confrontation, she begins to see the mechanisms at play. She recognizes the persona for what it is, a mask shaped by society's desires. She acknowledges the shadow, the fears, the insecurities, the truths she avoided. And in that acknowledgement, something shifts. Pain becomes insight, confusion becomes understanding, isolation becomes self-recognition. The silent curse, once invisible, now becomes a teacher. It shows her the cost of neglect, the power of truth, and the necessity of integrating all parts of the self. She learns that beauty can coexist with wisdom, influence can coexist with awareness, desire can coexist with autonomy. And so, in front of the mirror, she does not see only the persona. She sees herself, whole, unflinching, aware. The reflection is no longer a mask that others admire. It is a mirror of truth. The curse is silent, yes. It does not scream, it does not strike. But when faced, it speaks with clarity. It demands recognition, reflection, and courage. And when she answers, the curse transforms. From invisible prison, it becomes invisible guide. From silent torment, it becomes silent teacher. This is the final lesson. The curse is never about beauty itself. It is about neglecting the self behind it. It is about living in the filtered reflection of the world instead of the unfiltered truth of the self. It is about failing to confront the shadow until life forces confrontation. But confrontation is liberation. The silent curse, once understood, leads to integration, to wisdom, to autonomy, to a self that is no longer defined by admiration, but by truth. And now she stands, no longer a prisoner, but a witness. Beauty remains, attention remains, but they are no longer rulers of her life. The silent curse has spoken, and she has listened. If this moved something inside you, stay. We're building something for those who don't fake it. Subscribe, not just for the content, but for the confrontation. And if this left a wound, maybe it was meant to. Sometimes the best way to go deeper is to share the pain. Share it. Someone out there still believes beauty is a blessing without a price, still calls attention connection, still thinks desire is the same as devotion. This won't take away the loneliness, but it might show why it never leaves. Let this reach the ones still trading truth for praise. Let them tell them the mirror is not a friend if it only reflects what others want to see.